Hi, everybody. This is John Ryman from Oakland Socialist again, and this is going to be the second part in my series on why Marxism opposes individual terrorism. In the first part of this series, we talked about why that subject is important. We talked about the difference between individual terrorism and the armed struggle, and we explained what the historical classical view of Marxism is towards individual terrorism. In this part, we're going to talk about how the method of individual terrorism actually played out in real life experiences. First, in Chile in 1973 in the struggle against the Pinochet coup. Then in 1979 in Iran in the Iranian Revolution against the Shah, and then in South Africa in the 1980s in the struggle against apartheid. So with that said, let's get into it. In 1970, the Social Democrat Salvador Allende became president of Chile. This was at the crest of a rising wave of struggle by the Chilean working class, and Allende introduced many popular reforms. Naturally, this was resisted by the Chilean capitalist class and their number one ally, the U.S. capitalist class. They moved to bring down the Allende government through disruption and eventually through a coup. That coup was carried out by Chilean General Augusto Pinochet in 1973. During these 3 years of struggle, the Chilean working class started to see the danger of counter-revolution. They organized against it. The most important form of that organizing was the formation of what they called cordones industriales. These were committees of struggle set up mainly by industrial workers. Through the cordones, the working class actually challenged for direct power. At that time, there was also a wing of revolutionary-minded youth, mainly students, who had established a group called the Movement of the Revolutionary Left, or in Spanish, Movimiento de la Izquierda Revolucionaria, or MIRD, M-I-R, whose strategy was individual terrorism. As early as 1965, the MIR had set up its own guerrilla training camp in Valdivia province in Chile. They drew their members away from the working class, exactly as Lenin had said terrorist groups do. The MIR engaged in actions like the assassination of a former government official, Edmundo Perez Zujovic, who had been responsible for a massacre of workers. In preparation for a guerrilla war, the MIR also established their own arms cache. Their small arms cache was totally unable to overcome the power of the Chilean armed forces. However, by utilizing the method of individual terrorism, the MIR isolated themselves from the mass movement of the working class. Instead, any serious revolutionaries should have immersed themselves in that struggle of the working class, and in particular, in explaining the potential role of the cordones and a new form of government, a workers' government under workers' democracy. Based on this goal, the cordones could have made a systematic drive to win over the rank and file of the armed forces, who were really workers in uniform, and completely undermine the counter-revolution. The MIR's strategy of individual terrorism was a total failure. Next, let's look at the Iranian Revolution of 1979. In that year, the hated Shah of Iran was overthrown by a mass movement of the Iranian working class and youth. I should note that, except where otherwise noted, the following quotes and information come from the excellent short book Revolution and Counter-Revolution in Iran by Phil Marshall. Completely aside from the valuable information this book provides, it is the answer to the book on the same revolution by Medea Benjamin, who supports the Iranian theocracy. To continue, anyway, on May Day of 1979, there was a huge mass march in Tehran of an estimated 1.5 million people. Many factory delegations and large groups of unemployed workers participated with banners with slogans such as nationalization of all industries, there is no kind capitalist in the world, equal wages for women and men, work for the unemployed, and "Long live real unions and real shuras." This last slogan referred to the committees of struggle the Iranian working class had established, which were similar to the Chilean cordones. Nearly 15 years earlier, a group of revolutionary-minded students had set up the Mujahideen Khalq, MEK. Similar to the MIR in Chile, the MEK engaged in acts of individual terrorism, such as the 1970 attempt to kidnap and assassinate the U.S. ambassador to Iran, Douglas MacArthur. We quote Marshall at length here. Quote, "Belatedly recognizing the significance of the workers' movement, some guerrilla activists attempted to influence the shuras. They did have some isolated successes with some individual workers, but these were the exceptions which proved the rule. Nowhere did the guerrillas have a firm base in industry, and nowhere did they have an opportunity to influence the direction of the shuras movement. But this was only half the problem. The real difficulty was that the left did not understand the significance of the shuras. As Bayat comments, quote, almost all the left was surprised by the sudden emergence of the shuras. Almost all the left-wing organizations, as well as the shuras themselves, were confused about what to do and what kind of possible role the shuras could play politically." That quote. Marshall continues, quote, "Even where the left had contact with worker militants, it had little to say about the direction of the shura movement. On the most important development of the revolutionary experience, the left was silent, or worse, offered negative advice. For the left did have ideas about the way forward for the mass movement as a whole, ideas which soon proved suicidal." End quote. The result of this was similar to that in Chile, a counter-revolution, but in a more disguised form. The reactionary mullahs came to power and established a theocracy under which the Iranian working class and the oppressed, including but not limited to women and LGBTQ people, and also certain minority groups, including Arabs, suffer to this very day. As for the MEK, it experienced several splits, but still carries on as an ally of U.S. imperialism. Now, finally, let us consider the revolution in South Africa against apartheid in the 1980s. At that time, the black South African working class was leading the world. During those years, I was involved in an international socialist group called the Committee for Workers International, or CWI. The CWI had a group in South Africa. In London, I met and was strongly influenced by those comrades. One thing they explained to me that always stuck with me was the role of the South African Communist Party, the SACP. As the representatives of the Soviet Union, the SACP was seen as the real revolutionary wing of the movement and of the African National Congress, or ANC. The Communist Party played on that role to establish what they called guerrilla training camps outside of South Africa. My South African comrades in the CWI explained to me that the South African Communist Party recruited the most revolutionary-minded of the black South African youth to go to those training camps, and then brought them back into South Africa to conduct acts of individual terrorism, such as the bombing of a police station or the assassination of some particularly hated police officer. By playing that role, the South African Communist Party isolated the revolutionary-minded youth from the movement of the powerful South African black working class. And what was happening in the black working class? The most critical thing was that they were forming new independent unions, consolidating that into COSATU, and going on strike, as well as getting directly involved with the struggles in the communities. Here are some segments of a video made about the founding conference of COSATU. This video is well worth watching in full. It shows not only the conference itself, but also the power of the black South African working class. It also shows the connection that many black workers made between the apartheid system and capitalism itself, and how that connection was playing out through the workers' struggle. The video shows that this was what really put fear into the capitalist hearts. Check out what this capitalist has to say.
And that we must somehow, by opening up the system more dynamically than we have so far, rid our system of the image that the capitalist system in South Africa only has a white face. Because if that perception was to persist, then I myself do not believe that the private enterprise system will last in South Africa.
They want to secure the future for their profits, and they want to build a future South Africa, a future society that is dependent on capitalism. That's all. And they want to change the face. In South Africa, we don't want to change the face of the government, put the black capitalists forward. But what we want is to change the system, to change the society, to be a changed society, where there will be no exploitation of man by man.
It is no accident that while pursuing the method of individual terrorism, the SA Communist Party in effect agreed with what this capitalist had to say, that the struggle against apartheid and for democracy was totally separate from the struggle against capitalism itself. Nor is it an accident that, according to my comrades, the SACP actually opposed the formation of the new unions. As a result of this strategy, the ANC came to power accepting capitalism. They made one concession after another to the capitalists. Under the domination of the ANC, the COSATU leadership came to be dominated by a bureaucracy that is not that different from the union bureaucracy in the United States. Check out this graph. You can see that South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the entire world, and that situation has not improved. In 2012, the South African miners rebelled against this bureaucracy and moved to form a new union. They went on strike in Marikana. The ANC government moved in and conducted a massacre of those miners, very similar to the massacres the former apartheid government had carried out. The South African Communist Party played a powerful role in both the ANC and COSATU and bears some of the responsibility for the Marikana massacre. So this concludes the second part in my series on why Marxism opposes individual terrorism. And thank you for watching. In the next part, we will discuss the struggle against Zionism in Palestine, the Fatah and Hamas, and some general conclusions. Until then, please check out my blog site for more ideas along these lines, www.oaklandsocialist.com.